Folks, that's Thomas Jefferson. That's him. That's his idea of the Constitution. A compact formed by the states, in which the states are parties, just like a contract you have with your neighbor. If you have a contract with your neighbor, do you police that compact? Do you police that contract? Do you make sure that the other party lives up to his bargain? And what if he doesn't? Do you have a remedy? Do you have a remedy? Of course you do. You can ask it to be rescinded. You can ask that he abide by the terms of that contract. And Thomas Jefferson, a lawyer himself, practiced for 7 years, said the Constitution of the United States was no different than the contract you have, except the parties to it are the states. And the states are the repository of all power in this republic, except that explicitly given to the Congress of the United States. And where that Congress transgresses those explicit powers, it is the duty of the states to police it. You know, at the same time that Jefferson and John Breckinridge were seeking the passage of what became known as the Kentucky Resolution of 1798. At the same time, no less a person than James Madison, known to all of us as the father of the Constitution, the author of the Bill of Rights, introduced a resolution in the Virginia legislature, which was passed in December 1798 at the same time Kentucky's was. And that resolution declared that the offensive provisions of the Alien and Sedition Acts were contrary to and in excess of the powers given by the Constitution to Congress. It further called upon the Commonwealth of Virginia as a state, as a party to the compact, to interpose itself between the offensive provisions of the Alien and Sedition Acts and its own people and block them from being enforced. That's James Madison. Well, together these resolutions have become known to all of us as the Kentucky and Virginia Resolutions of 1798. Again, in December 1799, John Breckinridge of Lexington, his home was out on what is now Castleton Farm off the Ironworks Pike. He introduced yet another resolution in the Kentucky legislature calling upon Kentucky to simply nullify any act of Congress that transgressed the Constitution of the United States and the reserved powers of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. You know, Jefferson, Madison, Nicholas, Breckinridge, two Kentuckians, two Lexingtonians, recognized two essential facts of life at their time. One was that Congress would not correct the errors of its own ways. It would not. You can plea, you can pay lobbyists, you can do all you want, but Congress is not going to correct the errors of its ways. They also recognized another fact, might be familiar to you, that the federal courts were all occupied by Federalists, enemies of Jefferson, of Madison, of Breckinridge, and Nicholas. And they'd provide no relief whatsoever. So it was a futile effort to try to petition the United States courts for relief from them, even though these statutes explicitly violated at least 5 provisions of the Bill of Rights. Jefferson and Madison, Breckinridge and Nicholas all believed that if you were going to find relief, it had to be in the states. They're parties to this compact. They're the repositories of all reserve power in this land. They're the ones you should go to seek relief. They also created the Constitution of the United States. They created it as a compact between the states. As parties to that compact, as parties to that Constitution, Jefferson and Madison both believed, and they actually said in their resolutions, that the states were duty-bound to enforce the explicit grants of power and to make sure that Congress did not transgress upon any of those powers reserved to the states.
Right.
In the end, folks, the Alien and Sedition Acts went out of effect on March 4th, 1801. But you know, that was also a rather interesting day. On that day, Thomas Jefferson was inaugurated third president of the United States. And on the heels of his inaugural address, one of the great and most magnificent addresses ever given by a president, John Breckinridge became United States Attorney General. Breckinridge, if you ever want to go and stand alongside where he's buried, you can go to the Lexington Cemetery, and there you will see his stone, not too far from that of David Sayer and his Breckinridge's descendants. And there on his stone it reads, John Breckinridge, defender of the Louisiana Purchase. And underneath that it reads, author of the Kentucky Resolutions of 1798. Well, what does all this mean to us today? We face the enforcement of the so-called stimulus bills. They're absolutely drowning us in debt, killing our children's and grandchildren's futures, and for no other reason, folks, absolutely no other reason than to keep those currently in office to stay in office. That's all. And particularly this outrageous administration and outrageous Congress. Amen. And mind you, folks, this sounds radical. But anyway, Janet Napolitano calls us domestic terrorists anyway. I truly believe that these people really do have it in mind to see this country fall. You know, among the provisions in the first stimulus bill that our current president went around telling everybody we had to enact in order to come out of this recession are provisions that federalize all your health care, and this is even genetic health care records, to be used and shared by federal authorities as it sees fit, even without your consent. What does that have to do with stimulating the economy in the first place? And what does that say about your rights to privacy in your own health care, in your own records?